If you're interested in the story behind the business headlines, check out Big Technology Podcast, my weekly show that features in-depth interviews with CEOs, researchers, and reformers in business and technology. Hi, I'm Alex Kantrowitz. I'm a longtime journalist, CNBC contributor, and the host of the show. I empty my Rolodex every Wednesday to bring you awesome episodes, so go check out Big Technology Podcast. It's available on all podcast apps. Would love to have you as a listener.
From LinkedIn News, I'm Jessie Hempel, host of the Hello Monday podcast. Start your week with the Hello Monday podcast. We'll navigate career pivots. We'll learn where happiness fits in. Listen to Hello Monday with me, Jessie Hempel, on the LinkedIn Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Negotiate Anything. Negotiate Anything is produced by the American Negotiation Institute, and with over 3 million downloads and listeners in over 180 countries, listeners just like you have made this the #1 negotiation podcast in the world. I'm Kwame Christian, and I'm the director of the American Negotiation Institute. We're growing, and I want to introduce you to our new team members and new trainers. This will help to give you new, diverse perspectives on negotiation and conflict resolution. That's why I'm excited to let you know that Shane Martin, our head of sales and partnerships, is going to serve as co-host of the show from time to time. We are passionate about providing you with the best content that will help to make your difficult conversations easier, both at work and at home. Lastly, before we get into the episode, I want to remind you that our team conducts negotiation and conflict resolution trainings in the United States and abroad. Our trainings will give you the practical skills you need to resolve conflict, negotiate, lead, and persuade with confidence. Click the link in the description below to learn how we can help to make your difficult conversations easier. And now, let's get to the show. Lynn, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure, Kwame. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it is our pleasure, my friend. So how about you get us started by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I'm a Bronx girl. I was born and raised. I've stayed, but on my way to LA, I've been a conflict resolution strategist for over 40 years. So I help people to get in better relationship with conflict, from the everyday to the really difficult conversations. And a lot of my work involves people really looking at the connection between culture and conflict, which a lot of people don't understand. That to me, they're cousins. They are really connected to one another. I do work around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belongings. I am the creator of On the Matter of Race, which is a program for white people who are committed to taking the journey of learning about racism and taking action. And I am also the author of the book Closing Conflict for Leaders, which really helps leaders, especially those with teams, to really have the foundation of conversations that lead to resolving conflicts, or even to intervening before the conflicts escalate, which would be great. So that's pretty much what I do, besides being a mom to two amazing young men.
Lynn, I love this. And first of all, of course, I love it because I love conflict resolution, just like you do. But I also love that you've tied this to culture and race as well, which is something that people really struggle with.
Yeah, they do. I mean, it's interesting because those are really the hardest conversations to have. And a lot of times what I find is that companies, people, families, they go into it without a foundation for just being able to resolve conflicts, even on a basic level. So now you want people to talk about some of the most heated topics that we have when we start talking about race and culture, and they have no skills to even just talk about, well, why aren't you taking out the garbage every day, or why can't we work together on this project? Wow. So I love the work. I love the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. I didn't even mention this to you when we were chatting earlier, but so my second book is coming out, and it's going to come out in September of 2022. How to have difficult conversations about race. So we are aligned in that regard. And you're absolutely right, because a lot of times when we're doing some of our diversity, equity, and inclusion work, because we do the negotiation trainings, conflict resolution trainings, but we also do DEI as well. They say, hey, help our people to talk about race, and we do some consulting and some assessments, and we say, hey, your people can't talk about anything. So we need to take a step back here, a walk before we run here. But yeah, so I'm glad you're out there doing this good work, because it's really important. And this episode, so excited for this, because we're going to talk about three main things. First, we're going to talk about how we can check and shift our mindset as we go through our negotiations. Then we're going to talk about the skill of strategic listening. And then lastly, we're going to wrap this up with a very important concept, how culture can influence negotiations. And so I love that you are blending these things together. This is great. So when we're talking about shifting our mindset, let's just take a step back and talk very broadly about what mindset means in the context of negotiation and difficult conversations.
Yeah, I'm sure folks have heard this before, that the battle is lost before you even say one word if your mind is really not set in the place of where you want to go, how you want it to happen, right? And what would be the outcome that you would truly like. And a lot of times negotiation's scary for people. I know you know that. And so people don't even recognize that they're coming in with this mindset that either the person's never going to go for it, or never going to give me what I want. This is always a difficult thing, or this is a difficult person, or I never get what I want out of this, or I'm just going to bulldoze my way through this. Like, all these thoughts go through us that are not good for outcomes in negotiation, that not just get us what we want, but also leave the other people in a place where they feel pleased about how things went and would like to talk with you again, or see you again, or work with you again, or live with you still. So I think that people don't understand that the frame of mind that you go into negotiations with can lead you even when you think it's not.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And belief will have an impact on our actions. It will have an impact on how we are taken, how we engage with the conversation. And so even if somebody listens and they say, you know what, I like what Lynne said. I don't like this conversation. I don't think it's going to go well, but Lynne said I should have the conversation, so I'm going to have it. Well, kudos. First of all, on overcoming your fear, that's step one. But that mindset is going to have a significant impact on the way that you perform. And in a lot of cases, it's going to create a self-fulfilling prophecy, which leads to poor performance and then poor outcomes. And because of the way that we're thinking, we actually create the outcome that we feared the most.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And because most people do not like conflict, and negotiation was really around conflict, we're already going into it with a negative mindset, or we're going into it with a war-like mindset. And so that defeats everything right away. It's why so many people don't want to negotiate things that they actually can, and a lot easier than they think they can, because right away it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to engage in any kind of conflict.
Absolutely. And Lynne, I'm sure you've seen this in your work too, because sometimes people have that revelation, oh, I should be having these conversations. Oh, I can be successful in these conversations. And then I take action. And so what ends up happening, there are like two layers of shock, where first it's like, wow, I didn't think I could do it, but I did it. I had the conversation. And then, wow, it worked. That worked really really well.
That's right. Yes. And the mindset around planning for the conversation is crucial too. So many people, once they finally decide or get the courage that they're going to have the conversation, they're just going to throw themselves into it without really taking the time to think about, well, big one, do all the time. So how are you going to open that conversation? Well, I hadn't thought about that. You hadn't thought about how you're going to open it, but you're going to have it. Whoa. Because that right there sets the stage. It sets the foundation. So at least know how you're going to open the conversation and practice it. There's nothing wrong with rehearsing what it is that you're going to say, and then really to work on sitting back, listening, and observing what the reaction is to your opening up of the conversation.
Yeah, it's so simple but so overlooked. The basic concept of practicing and thinking through it and considering how people will respond, and multiple responses. They're not just going to say, "Wow, Lynn, brilliant, I'm on board." We have to anticipate a little bit of resistance. And I think as the listeners are hearing this, they're saying to themselves, "Okay, Lynn, I'm on board. It makes sense. Mindset, need to have a better mindset." But here's the thing. One of the things that I've noticed is that there is often a lack of self-awareness. And so a lot of times it's not only the fact that people have a mindset that is defeatist or unnecessarily combative or whatever it happens to be. It's that they don't recognize that it is a mindset that they have, and they don't recognize that it can change. And if you don't have that awareness, then you can't make the necessary mindset shifts in order to have the outcomes and the performance that you want.
That's right. And I do a lot around the body and the breath, because to connect yourself to that allows you to put yourself in a place where you can actually center and focus, right? When we do any kind of balance work, right? I'm a dancer. I grew up in ballet, and you focus on a point in front of you and you stay focused. You're not going all over the place. You're actually right there all the time. It allows you to be balanced. Same thing when you're talking about negotiation, right? So let me be focused. How do I do that? Take a minute to just sit, quiet, observe the breath, take 3 breaths, right? And then center yourself. Be ready with whatever it is you're going to open with, and then sit back and be ready to observe and listen.
Does your company invest in professional development training? If you believe that your team would benefit from a negotiation workshop, all you need to do is go to our website, fill out the workshop request form, and then we'll set up a time to chat. These workshops are completely customizable, and we've done them all around the country. Negotiation and conflict resolution skills are beneficial across all professions, but they're especially useful in procurement, purchasing, sales, sourcing, and contract management. Our calendar is filling up quickly, and we even have some workshops scheduled for next year. If you think you might want one, I'd suggest reaching out soon so you don't miss out. Check out the link in the description to learn more. And now, back to the show.
Hey you, I'm Andrew Seaman. Do you want a new job? Or do you want to move forward in your career? Well, you should listen to my weekly show called Get Hired with Andrew Seaman. We talk about it all, and it's waiting for you, yes you, wherever you get your podcasts.
Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/marketer. Terms and conditions apply.
I love this. And as they're centering themselves and they're starting to consider their mental state, and they're considering this podcast episode, and they're saying, okay, my mindset, now I know which mindsets I should not have. How would you describe the appropriate mindset for the conversation?
What I would say is why are you in this? Why do you want to have this conversation? What are the important reasons for you? Not the fears, right? And not even the negativity around it, but why is this important to you? Because I want to have a better relationship, because I want to raise, because everyone around is so tense and we have to have this conversation, because this person is important to me, because this job is important to me. Know the reason. Stay focused on that reason, because trust and believe there are going to be lots of obstacles to you staying focused, but at least to know, why are you even going into it? If you're going into it because I'm being forced to, and I really absolutely am not going to want to do this and hate this, and that is not the right time to have the conversation. But if you can, knowing that fear is going to rise up and all kinds of objections, but if you can say to yourself, why is this important to me? And let me stay focused on that, then that's the mindset that you want to go into it with.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think that's great. And this is a perfect time for us to segue into that second point, which is the skill of strategic listening. Because if you have the appropriate mindset, it makes listening more effective, a bit more organic. But Lynne, I absolutely love the fact that you put a modifier before listening. And so when you say strategic listening, what does that mean?
Strategic listening is listening in 4 boxes and knowing what to do with each of those boxes. So you're listening for the issues. What is this about for this person, right? And you're listening for feelings. And people don't like to go into feelings, but feelings guide a lot of conversations. So what are the feelings, either expressed or through words or unexpressed, but you can hear it, right? You can feel it. What are feelings that are coming up? And then here's the big one, values. What does this person value? Because what they value is what this conflict and what this negotiation sits on. So you got to speak to that, right? So, wow. So it sounds like you value respect. It sounds like you value honesty, right? You've got to speak to that. And then the kicker, positions. It's one of the things that I've seen people do is get derailed by positional statements, what I call positional statements. Like, if you don't give me, then I will, right? I'll quit, or I'll ruin you, or I'll never speak to you again. And then we start going off trying to negotiate that piece, when the reality is, if you stick to those first 3 boxes, if you stick to talking about the issue, what's the issues are for them, if you talk about the feelings, and then you talk about the values for the people, when you satisfy those 3 boxes, you can come back around to those positional statements and then, I was just mad, or I was really angry, or I just thought you weren't going to give me all of the reasons why we never want to derail the conversation and the progress by going after the positional statements. And really, people throw out positional statements because you're not addressing the other 3 boxes for them.
There are so many directions to go with this, Lynne, that I, as a podcast host, am overwhelmed. Let's just pick one and go for it. So let's use the recency bias, and I'll focus on positions. Now, when it comes to positions, this I think, and the way that you described it is kind of the next level from Getting to Yes. When you think about Fisher and Ury with that seminal book of Getting to Yes, they talk about collaborative negotiation versus positional bargaining, where people just say, I want this, and the other person says, I want that. And then they say, there's a gap between us. Let's say it louder. That's how negotiation used to be. But now, when we're talking about positions, I think people are more aware of the collaborative negotiation style, but this doesn't change the fact that humans, by definition, by design, are not great at negotiation and yes. Conflict resolution. And what you said was really, really powerful, and I don't want the listeners to miss it. And tell me if I'm summarizing this the right way with the example that you gave, because in these conversations, if somebody is more emotional, they're going to state their positions with more force, more vigor, more power, all those things. But if we focus on listening in those 3 other boxes, if we focus on the issues, if we focus on the feelings, and we focus on the values, and the person feels heard and appreciated, sometimes those positions, those really staunch and hard positions, can magically seem to disappear.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like magic, but what it is that you address what they really wanted addressed, right? We're used to putting our foot down and standing in this and I'm not moving. And we see so many more examples of that than we do of people having the really difficult conversations in positive ways. So what's really happening is not magically disappearing. It's that you are addressing the heart of the matter for them. Yes, I want these three things, right, as issues. And you are absolutely feeling invalidated. You're feeling invisible. You're feeling hurt, right? Abandoned. There's so many different things. First of all, we don't even talk about feelings from any space other than anger or if it's happiness, right? We don't even know. I believe that in English there's well over 300 feelings. It may even be 3,000. Don't quote me, but I know there's well over 300 feelings, right? And we get to maybe 3 or 4 of those feelings. So getting to what's really happening here, right? Embarrassed, right? Whatever that feeling is, being able to name that for those people and being able to say, and you're valuing your authority, you're valuing being respected, you're valuing the way that you're being spoken to. I mean, the values of what everything else sits on. And so being able to say that to someone, they're not just being heard, they're being seen, right? I believe values make you seen. Wow, you see me. So yeah, so we may not have gotten to exactly what I want yet, but now I'm in the position to go, I'm interested now because they've shown me that they're starting to get me.
Yeah, 100%. And Lynn, this reminds me of one of the a negotiation that I had that was really tough. It got to the point, it was when I was practicing law. And the two CEOs were sending insulting emails back and forth. I said, oh, we've gotten to the sandbox here. Okay, we've devolved. And so I remember we were having the conversation and I coached my client through it. I said, hey, at certain points, this is what I'm going to handle. This is what you're going to handle. And it was a Zoom call. And while we were having the conversation, the guy was focusing on his positional statements and he was saying them with anger. He was really, really dug in. And I was texting my client. I said, let me handle it. Let me handle it. Don't say anything. Just let me handle it. Please. And so I said, after he said all of that, what I did is I just summarized it to show him that I heard. And now I have the language to explain it, focusing on the issues, focusing on the values, and then lastly focusing on the feelings. And I said, hey, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like with everything that happened, you feel a little bit offended by the way that this was handled. And so you could see like his whole body soften, you could visibly see it. And he looked up in the sky and he said, well, I wouldn't say offended, but I would just say kind of taken aback. And you could hear everything calm down. And that was the turning point. But again, did I give him anything? No. Did I concede any points that he made? No, I just listened, showed him that I listened, and showed him that I saw him. And then the position just started to soften and then melt away, and the conversation became a lot more productive.
Yes. Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah. And tell me if this is something you experience. I've disclosed this many times on the podcast, and I have been very relieved to hear that other negotiation and conflict resolution experts feel the same way. And I hope you do too, or else I'm going to end the interview shortly. No pressure. No pressure. Now, it seems like for me, I can do a really good job of doing this in an actual negotiation in the business world. If I'm representing a client in law, if I'm negotiating or helping one of our consulting clients, I can think really strategically, and the strategic listening it's easier. It comes to me more easily. But then at home, if I'm talking to my wife, my family, or my friends, and it gets a little bit heated, it's like I have no skills at all. And is this something that you've seen?
Don't press eject, and I'll tell you why. Because I have my youngest son who has been brought here to teach me that exact lesson, that you can't just do it in business. You've got to do it at home too. So yeah, I started out that way, doing really badly. but now, and he lives here within the same, and he's a great talker. He just is. And so I now can lead with the skills. It doesn't mean that there aren't plenty of times though where I walk away and go, this is where you blew it. But I go back and I say, this is where I blew it. I'd love to have a second chance at this conversation, and then we go. Yeah, but otherwise I would agree with you. I would say 3 years ago, I would agree with you that I was just a hot mess when it came to doing it at home. But now, much better at it. But I believe in asking for second chances. That's the other thing around negotiation that I have found. People really think, well, if you blew it, that's it. And I say, go back and acknowledge it, own it. And then ask, can I do this again? Can we speak again? It's rare, and I mean even strangers that's happened with me. It's rare that the person says no. They're so stunned, number one, because who does that, right? And then they just say, okay, shoot your best shot. And I will say, pretty much every time it has turned around to be a really positive result.
This is great. So I'm not going to end the interview. This was a great answer. So there is hope, and I appreciate that. That's good to know, and that's good for the listeners to know as well. But you just dropped a strategy that is so simple, but almost nobody uses it. Hey, I'm not perfect. I'll make mistakes. I'm going to fail in these conversations. That's okay, because redemption is a thing. I'm going to humble myself and have the conversation and let them know, hey, that conversation didn't go well because I did A, B, and C. I apologize. Would you give me another chance? I think that is really, really great. And it's so important for people to realize, because it will make them more likely to engage in the conversation because they realize that there is hope for recovery if a mistake is made.
Yes. Oh, and I'm going to say to your listeners, this is a great strategy. It is one that we are not taught, we are afraid of, but I am telling you, you would be surprised at how many people will give you that second chance. But as long as you're willing to own it, because how many people today own their mistakes and, and then ask for another chance. So yeah, thank you this is a very important strategy that I hope your listeners will try, because you will make mistakes. We all will.
Yes, 100%. And now, Lynne, this is something that people have asked me a number of times, and I want to get your thoughts on this, because we understand that really the core of having these difficult conversations is listening. We want to use this strategic listening, like you said, listening in these 4 boxes: issues, feelings, values, positions. Now, as we're thinking about transitioning from listening to eventually, at some point, sending our message, I know there's a bit of an art and science to this. So for you, in your experience, how do you know when it is time to listen and ask more questions versus when it's actually time to make your point?
Yeah, great question. I usually listen for, am I hearing the same thing again, right? So if I'm hearing it a second time, then I will say to myself, you haven't addressed it yet. You haven't hit it yet, right? And so if I've got enough information, then I'm going to say, hey, I want to just say what I've heard so far, right? Wrapping up everything. And I'd love to respond to this, especially if they've been talking a while, right? I want to make sure that I'm not losing everything. If I've listened, you've talked, I've asked questions, I'm clear now. I'm clear on what it is that I want to go in there and respond to. Then I'm going to say, again, one more time, repeating back what I've heard. Got it right? Great. I want to respond to that. And then I go in. So it's pretty much that most people want to do it right out the gate, right? Okay, I listened once. Now I'm going to get my name. No, really ask. Have the courage to say, is there anything else? What else do I need to know here, right? That's important. And listen again. Listen in those boxes. Repeat it back. And I go one more time. I do 3. I'm just like, okay, and I just want to ask again. Anything else? Okay. Right. Got that. Now I'd really like to respond. And here's what I want to say about, and then know what you are responding to. That's the other thing. Everybody wants to kind of do this giant smorgasbord, like they want to respond to the whole thing. Break it up, right? So on this point, here's what I want to say. Here's what I want to say to this. Here's what I would like to say to that.
Yes. Oh, this is good. This is good. I have another story, Lynn. I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Story time with Kwame Christian. Thanks for listening.
All right.
I appreciate it. So here we go. So I remember one time I was having a conversation with my mom, and she disagreed with a decision that I made with my son, Kai. I don't even remember what it was, but anytime your parent is giving you advice on parenting, I don't know. It's very annoying. I love my mom to death, but I just come on. But anyways, and so I said, listen, I am going to focus on listening effectively. And what I did was this. I just said, all I'm going to do is I'm going to use the compassionate curiosity framework. I'm just going to stay in number 1 and number 2. I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to acknowledge and validate emotions. I'm going to get curious with compassion, and I'm not going to go to step 3, joint problem solving yet. I'm going to do it until I hear her completely. And so I just cycled through it over and over and over again for about 15 minutes. And I just said, is anything else? Good. Summarize. And then I said, okay, anything else? She said, no. And she's like, are you okay? I said, yes, I just want to make sure that I'm listening effectively and I have a full understanding of where you stand. And she said, well, I appreciate that. And then I took like 3 minutes to explain myself after I heard her. And she said, oh, I agree with you. That was it, and I'll tell you though, Lynn, the thing that was really fascinating, just kind of looking at it as not only as the participant, but almost trying to be an objective observer, like a scientist, but I could actually feel what I was feeling. It was physically painful to do. Like I could feel tension registering through my chest and my abdomen throughout the conversation. And so I think it's important for the listeners to realize that this is easier said than done, and it's going to take a lot of restraint, and it's going to take a lot of practice, because you are really actively working against your natural inclinations in this moment, because you're going to want to say something, but that's often not the right thing to do at that time.
Yes, agreed. And then you got to give the gift of listening, and also recognize that the more of a relationship that you have with the other person, the more painful physically it's probably going to be, right? Because it's sitting on some history. And you're talking about mom. Now, come on, mom relationship. That one it can be filled with so much tension and definitely history, right? And especially when you're trying to change the game. Right, because we know their patterns. I have a similar story for me, is that I used, just even paraphrasing for the first time with my mom, and really got in there and got to what she was saying, and she just didn't know what to do. She just was totally confused. Like, I don't know what to do with this, because usually I just ram all over you. You go for me, and nothing really gets done. But this time, sitting back, listening, paraphrasing, she was like, oh, this is all brand new. Now, what do I do? So I just got in there and just acknowledged, you're right. I can see that you're not used to what I'm doing, because usually we could go at each other. But now I'm really trying to understand what it is that you're saying to me, because I really feel like I haven't heard you. And I want you to know that I really do want to hear you this time. And that it's slowly over time. Slowly over time. But that I know was the turning point for the slowly over time, changing the way that we interacted with each other in difficult conversations.
Oh, that's great. That is great. And I know we're coming up on time, Lynn, but I want to make sure we save time for culture and how culture can influence negotiation. So when you think about culture, let's start off with an operational definition for how you are considering culture. How would you define it for the audience?
Oh, I would say that it is all of the best definition. Lord, I wish I could remember the author of the best definition, but it is like the air that we breathe, right? It is within us and all around us, and it influences everything we do. So culture is everything from our beliefs and attitudes. It's the norms, right? It's the way in which we interact with each other that really carries history and generational history at that. It is the way that we it influences how we dress. It influences things like, right, where we look when we're talking to people. It influences things like who is going to be the talking. So for me, it is it's one of those things that I guess it's easily ignored. That's why I like the definition around it's like the air that we breathe. It's easily ignored because we don't really see it, but it's here influencing us even when we do not know or are conscious of its influence. And then even worse, when we are conscious, we use it like a weapon at times.
Oh, okay. So we need to go into that one. So can you talk more about that point? That's really interesting.
So I'll give you a good example that sits with me. For so long, I spent my life in the helping profession, and I'm still in the helping profession. So that's what I like about the shift is that, but in the helping profession in which I grew up, African Americans owed each other, their communities, a debt, a society, some kind of societal debt to help each other because of racism and all of the things that have been against us. And so I grew up in a family of people who really believe that you don't go after the money, you go after helping folks. And if that means that you don't get paid the best salaries, but you do the best that you can, right, with what you get, the goal is to help the community do better. And after a while, I just said, the community may be doing better, but I am not. And I just feel like I can do service, but do it differently. And so I said it to my dad, who had, 3 jobs my whole life, and all of them were around service. And I said, Dad, I think I'm going to do more work in the corporate space. Like, I really want to work in that space because I believe that they have the funds to pay me better, right, for the work that I'm doing, and it's valuable. And my dad looked at me, he said, oh, so you're going to go from the needy to the greedy, huh? And I just thought, wow. And do you know that derailed me for 3 years? Because culturally, it really has been drummed into me that I do owe my community not only this debt, but almost to be poor in a way too, because that humbled me, and that said that I understood, my roots, and for 3 years. I did not make the moves that I wanted to make because of that statement. And that's why I say we use it as a weapon sometimes, because we will say these things, these cultural statements, right, to each other as a way to keep people in line and keep them in their place. And it isn't just the Black community. I can tell you that I have colleagues and friends in all kinds of communities, and there are many communities. My friends who are Asian talk about Asian shame and how that's used as a weapon, right? And there's just so many different examples that have been told to me once I start sharing my things. And it is used in many ways to make people act in ways that the culture is comfortable with.
This is really fascinating, because I've always thought about culture almost as this invisible force that's having an impact, right? The general way that we do things, and we don't fully appreciate the impact that it's having on us. I've never considered intentionally weaponizing the culture to keep people in their place or doing different things. Because when you think about the definition, like a simple way of conceptualizing persuasion, it's having a conversation with somebody, or not even having a conversation. Let's just say getting somebody to do something that they otherwise would not have done, or believe something that they otherwise would not have believed. And so what your father did in that case was very persuasive, because had you not had that conversation, hypothetically, you might have changed your career, your life trajectory 3 years earlier, and you would have done it. But he didn't provide any data, any facts, any rationale. All he did was use one tool, and use it very, very persuasively. He used culture and said, oh, okay, you're going outside of the way that we do things here.
Yes. this, right? Without using those words, because that's the thing about culture, right? When you know the culture, you don't have to use specific words. You can say something and you know that the person understands what it is you're really saying when you say that thing.
There's so many interesting applications here. It's like it's one of those things where I'm going through all my life and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, culture was weaponized in this case. For example, I'm a Buckeye, a proud Buckeye, 3 degrees from Ohio State, the Ohio State University here, and but I'm also a Caribbean American, right? So our people, we like to wear colorful clothing. Yellow looks really good. It complements my complexion very well. Now, fun fact, when I was coming to school, I had a lot of yellow in my wardrobe, but the problem is at Ohio State, our rivals are the Michigan Wolverine, maize and blue, yellow. And so like the responses that I got, yellow, Kwame? I was like, what? Oh, no, go ahead and wear yellow. They didn't tell me not to. I'm like, oh, we don't do that here. Okay. All right. Noted. Right. And then when I went home one day, I looked in my closet years after graduation, no yellow. No, still, that's just not the way we do things. And I think this is really interesting because we could think about this in terms of persuasion versus manipulation. Because when it comes to the distinction between the two, the way I think about it is that it's intent, but there are ways that you can have an impact on somebody by using this, and really it could push somebody to do something that is not in their best interest, but you can hide behind plausible deniability and say, but I didn't tell you not to do that.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you that my dad knew exactly what he was doing. So my dad was a great dad, always encouraging of us. But this one thing, right, this was the thing. And really, there was nobody else in my family, and I have a big extended family that was going in that direction. Everybody else was in the service. He never, in those 3 years that I didn't make the move, he never asked me, so what did you decide about corporate, or how's corporate going? He never asked me, because he knew that what he used was enough.
Wow. And so now for everybody listening, how do we factor this in our negotiations and difficult conversations?
Yeah. Well, I think most people don't weaponize culture, but it's so recognized, right, when it's happening. But I was going to say one of the most impactful things that happened for me is that I was teaching a course actually on culture and conflict at a university, and there were not just graduate students, but there were actually business people who were allowed to come into the course as well. And so I started talking about eye contact and how it's different in different cultures and what that really means. And for here in the United States, in Western culture, it's very much looking someone in the eye. I mean, I was taught that too, right? That you look someone in the eye and you let them know that you are not only giving the respect, but that you're worthy of the respect as well. And I said, and every culture doesn't do that. And I have worked in schools a lot and have seen immigrant children getting into trouble because they weren't looking their teachers in the eye. And so this gentleman from Pakistan, he raised his hand. He said, oh, thank God you said that. And I said, why? He said, I don't know if you noticed, but this whole time you've been talking, I've been doing this. Up and down, like looking up and down. And he says, what is happening is that in my country, you're a person of authority. So I look down. And then I remember, I'm in America. So I look up. And he's like, but because culture is so natural, my eyes go down again. And then I go, remind yourself you're in America. And I look up. And he said, so thank you for saying this, because number one, I can acknowledge that this is a struggle for me, but also other people are hearing this because I've been accused of not respecting authority by doing this. And the reality is I thought I was respecting authority. So really understanding that culture can influence anything from eye contact. And when we talk about conversation, you got to know that you can't just judge whether someone is really paying attention or respecting you by one culture, right? Particularly you're in Western culture and it's like, they've got to look me in the eye. And then people will also judge that. Well, they should know that here we do this. It isn't just about knowing. This gentleman knew that was the struggle. But because culture is so within us, he was naturally doing what was the cultural norm for him. So knowing, really acquainting yourself with some of the things about culture that are really important when you are really in a negotiation, when you're in a conversation, is going to be incredibly important. If you're in a conversation and there is a gender issue, right? Noticing who's speaking more and who's speaking less. And can you give the opportunity for that? Or are you placing someone in a difficult situation? Or are you asking them to do something that they are not culturally comfortable with by taking the lead? I mean, that is something that is really important as well. Are you taking silence for non-action? Oh my gosh, there is so much action in silence. I do a lot of work around getting comfortable with silence and taking that. A lot of my clients who are Asian who speak about that and just the respect around being silent that you're showing to authority, but also the work you're doing on really thinking and really trying to understand what's being said and then showing respect, right? Really just not shaming them if you're disagreeing with something or thinking of how to say this the right way, or to not say anything at all, because that's so much more respectful than challenging them. Those are all things that if you aren't even aware that those are possibilities that could be happening right before you, then your negotiation could very quickly fail.
Oh man, there's so much to cover, and so we're going to have you back to cover the rest. This is great, Lynn. We really appreciate it. And before you go, make sure to let the listeners know about you, your books, and how they can get in touch with you too.
Yes, you can, Lynne Maureen Hurdle, Lynn with an E on the N, MaureenHurdle.com. That's where you can find me and my work. And my book is on Amazon, and it's Closing Conflict for Leaders. And you can also find the information on the matter of race on my website as well. And I'm just excited to have had this conversation with you, really and truly, Kwame. Thank you so much. And thank you, all of the listeners. I'm praying this is helpful to you, because I know it's been helpful to me and my clients.
Yes. Oh, Lynn, we really appreciate it. Thanks for spending your time with us today.
Thank you.
Congratulations! You've just joined an elite club. By listening to a full episode, you're now officially on the Negotiate Anything team. So welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episodes of the show. The best things in life lie on the other side of difficult conversations. Keep learning, keep practicing, and keep getting better. Your relationships will improve, your career will soar, and you'll have the confidence you need to get the most out of these crucial conversations. Again, thank you for joining the team. We're excited to have you, and I will see you in the next episode. I'll catch you later.